What's going on, you guys? It's your boy SoTeam285, and I am bringing back my ranking series. So, some of you may remember that a couple of years ago I had done a ranking of all Marvel movies I had seen. But ever since I made that video, I've watched a bunch more that came out previously, such as the rest of the Marvel animated movies, all of the TV movies, as well as all of the new releases we had gotten since that video came out. So, with us not getting a new Marvel movie until Spider-Man Brand New Day, I thought now would be the perfect time to buckle up and give you my updated ranking of all 113 Marvel movies I have seen, from my least favorite to my absolute favorite. This is going to be a ton of fun to do. And remember, my list is not the right list, it's just my personal list based on my own personal opinions. I'm going to try and keep this as subjective as I can so that it will make help you understand how I feel the way I feel. With that said, let's get started and let the controversy begin. So coming in dead last is Venom Let There Be Carnage. Yeah, this one hasn't changed one bit. I found this movie to be the most irritating Marvel movie of all time. It's painfully unfunny. I think it is an absolute mess of a story, and Eddie and the Venom symbiote were the most intolerable thing in the movie. I wanted to strangle them. I found the Carnage symbiote more sympathetic than them. And the fact that Cletus Cassidy they did with him and Shriek what Suicide Squad 2016 did with the Joker and Harley Quinn is kind of a bad sign because they were trying to make Carnage more sympathetic. Yeah, that's a whole bad can of worms. So this one just annoys me the most. I'd rather rewatch every single movie above it than this. Coming in at number 112 is the 1990s Captain America. Not much to say about this one other than it's cheap and amateurish and has a kind of hollow story. It looks bad, from the costume of Captain America to both how the Red Skull looks with the red face paint and without it. It looks so and displeasing. And Captain America himself is kind of unlikable and has the personality of a plank of wood. He has little personality, so it's hard for me to root for him because I feel he doesn't really show much charisma and much personality. So there really isn't much to say about this one. It's just very hollow to me. Coming in at number 111 is Fantastic. Now, I don't think there should be many arguments against Fantastic's placement in the bottom three. I mean, this might be the most universally despised superhero movie, but for good reason. It's embarrassed to be a superhero movie, and the plot and story gets worse and worse and worse. It really felt like they didn't know what to do with most of the characters except for maybe Reed Richards, and less said about the third act, the better, because there are so many cheesy lines, and it's very generic, and there are lines again that make it feel as if they're embarrassed to be a superhero movie. This movie's just an absolute disgrace. Coming in at number 110 is the 1994 Fantastic Four. This is the Eternal War. Which Fantastic Four movie is worse? But make no mistake, the 1994 Roger Corman film is still awful. It's cheap and amateurish just from the way it looks, and even the plot gets weird. They mix the origin story with these weird underground stories, and it just made it hard to sit through. I would say that this movie is just boring and lame, and it has no real substance. I guess because many Marvel films were not good around this time, there was less expectations compared to what Fantastic had. That's the slight edge it has over Fantastic, but otherwise, this movie is still absolutely awful. I don't recommend it. Coming in at number 109 is going to be Generation X. This was the first attempt at bringing mutants to film, and it was not great, if you ask me. And the problem with it is that it was just so painfully forgettable. Heck, I myself barely remember much about it other than maybe going to a fair, and just the characters were just so boring. This film is just absolutely boring. There is not really much to say about this one. Unless you're very curious and want to be a true Marvel completionist, Marvel movie completionist, I don't really recommend this one. At number 108 is Kraven the Hunter. As someone who hasn't been a fan of any of the Sony Spider Man villain films, I had lowish expectations of this one, but I was hoping that Aaron Taylor Johnson was able to elevate it from awful to good. And he tried. He was the only one to care about this film, hence why it's not in my bottom five. But wow, this movie's awful. What? The plot is absolutely all over the place. The story keeps changing its mind of what it wants to do. No one else gave a care about this film when you talk about the director, the writers, the other actors. Like, wow. And what it does with many villains, specifically the Rhino, it was absolutely idiotic and stupid. This movie is awful. If you missed out on it, I envy you. Coming in at number 107 is The Death of the Incredible Hulk. I'd imagine all of you who have maybe nostalgia for the Bill Bixby TV show would probably have these movies a lot higher. Honestly, I did not grow up with that, so maybe I'm at a disadvantage, but I just was not invested in the story of this film whatsoever. It bored me, and there was nothing to grab me in or pull me in. So when he dies at the end, which was probably the most memorable thing about this film, it did not hit me. I'd imagine this might be controversial for fans of the Bill Bixby show, and I'm happy you enjoyed it. This one was just not for me. Number 106, Venom. You guys know me. You know I'm not a fan of the first Venom movie at all. It's agonizing. Maybe not as much as its sequel, but it's still agonizing in its own way. It starts out fine with a interesting setup, but once we cut to Eddie Brock, it goes absolutely downhill for me. He is just a massive idiot, and I just want to slap him in the face. I did not root for him. I thought the acting was weird and it required the characters to be such idiots. Like that doctor, that assistant. Why didn't she call the police? Why did she have to ask for help from this journalist who lost his job because he was an idiot? Look, if you love the first Venom film, cool, but I'm not in that camp. I strongly dislike this one. Number 105, Man Thing. Honestly, this would have actually been lower if it weren't for like the last couple of minutes where they actually show Man Thing, and he does look good, but he's not even the main character. He only shows up in like those last few minutes. I mean, he's killing people off screen. Not that I need to see the deaths because this movie is absolutely gross as it is already. It's not to my taste, and the main characters, the cop and random girl, were not compelling for me. Honestly, if Man Thing didn't look as good as he did, this might have actually been the second worst or the worst for me. Thankfully, he does, so it saves it from being lower, but this movie's still awful if you ask me. Coming in at number 104 is Blade Trinity. I'm not a big fan of the first two Blade movies, but wow, this movie's all over the place. In terms of plot, and the fact that Blade was probably the worst part of this film. Granted, we've heard the behind the scenes drama with Wesley Snipes. Jessica Biel and Ryan Reynolds managed to save it from being lower for me, but God bless them, they're not enough. And they're side characters, yet it feels like they're the main characters, and personally, I would have preferred if they were. Again, Blade's not interesting, and the story is just very repetitive of the first one, except you have Dracula who has a recognizable name. But other than that, this movie just doesn't do it for me, like, at all. Number 103, Captain America 2 Death Too Soon. I'll give the 1970s Captain America a bit more credit for giving Steve's some more personality compared to in the 1990s version and feeling a bit more like different human beings talking with each other. But the plot is absolutely bizarre. Uh, Like, what? People dying slowly because they're hit by this gas feels very out of place with Captain America. I feel like something this small scale would have worked with a better superhero, but, well, another superhero, but not with Captain America. I don't think it works very well. I think Captain America needs grander stories, so this one just did not stick it for me. Number 102, X-Men Dark Phoenix. It's a shame that the Fox X-Men films went out like this, because this was a good franchise when it started out. But this one was filled with bad dialogue, bad line delivery, messy motivations that are flimsy and flip flopping, and it kind of makes you root against the X Men in many ways, especially with why Charles just decided to suppress Jean Grey's memories. Like, what? And then the ending just made me go, what just happened? It also doesn't help that we barely know these new X-Men, as in Cyclops, Storm, Nightcrawler, Jean Grey, because this and Apocalypse did a poor job at establishing these new versions. So yeah, I don't recommend this one. Coming in at number 101 is Madam Web. I think most of us can agree that Madam Web belongs in the bottom 15. I mean, the plot, while more cohesive than Craven's, relies on the characters being such idiots. Like, the main villain, with really bad acting and really bad dialogue, has this vision and just gets scared. It requires on him to be an idiot and not do, like, the logical and simple things. Same thing with the three girls. Now, I do like Isabel Merced's performance. I think she elevates the film slightly above the bottom 10, but she can't save it. Again, no good acting really, and the three girls were kind of idiotic. Actually, they were very idiotic. So yeah, Madam Web, awful. Okay, we are now in the top 100 with Venom The Last Dance. I guess with this one, I was like, well, it was not as bad as the first two Venom films, in my opinion, so I'll take what I can get. I guess because it acted like a definitive ending to this version of Venom is why it doesn't fall lower, because it made me happy knowing that I won't have to sit through yet another of these agonizing Venom films. But this movie still has its own problems, like trying to do too much at once, the villains being idiotic. Heck, the supporting characters are idiotic, and then there are these doctors that are built up as being important, but really, if you take them out of the film, it doesn't make a difference. I just feel like this one was a bit too directionless, if you ask me. Number 99, Morbius. You know, the fact that what I would call the least awful of the Sony Spider Man villain universe films is still awful goes to show what a dumpster fire of a universe Sony has really put up and has pretty much wasted everyone's time, including mine. Now, I do think the actors here, specifically Jared Leto and Matt Smith, do try to save this film with their natural charisma, especially in the case of Matt Smith, but they can only do enough. The film does start out interesting, but kind of like Fantastic, as you go from scene to scene, it gets progressively worse, and again, the less said about the third act, the better. Heck, the less said about the mid-credit scene, the better. So, yeah, Morbius may be the least bad of the Sony Spider-Man villain films, but it's still awful in my opinion. Coming in at number 98 is the 1989 Punisher movie. Admittedly, the Punisher is a character that has never really resonated with me, at least his solo titles. I don't mind him when he's a supporting character to another hero, but his own adventures, not so much. But this one very much solidified that because this is just mindless action. This is just a mindless action film with over the top violence. But the biggest problem is that Frank Castle has like zero personality. I did like that moment with the kid at the end, but that's really it. The villains were just not interesting to me. So this is just a boring, mindless, action-filled Punisher film for me. Look, if some of you like it, cool, but I just don't. Number 97, Howard the Duck. Ironically, the first theatrically released Marvel movie ever. Yeah, this is what they did. I know, it baffles me too. It's at best a so bad it can be kind of unintentionally funny film, but it's just bizarre such bizarre creative choices, such as Howard having a relationship with a human woman, but also it feels like two plots crammed to one. First, it's about Howard crashing down to space from space to Earth and becoming Leia Thompson's character's band manager, and then this random alien comes in wanting to conquer the Earth. Kind of a shift there. So this movie just doesn't know what it wants to be. It can be unintentionally funny at times and have a bit of charm, but that's it. Number 96, Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. This one has grown on me a little bit, maybe by looking at some of the other Marvel films that came before it, as well as some of the ones we've gotten ever since, a few of them. But I still think Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance is a mess. I feel like our main character, Johnny Blaze, was lazily shoehorned in a story that didn't really call for him. Then they tried to do the Superman 2 thing, but it didn't really work here. And it was just bizarre. Some of the performances were alright, and there might be a good story in here, but it just didn't stick the landing here. So while I can have a bit of appreciation for this one, I'm still not a big fan. Number 95, The Trial of the Incredible Hulk. Another painfully forgettable film from the 1980s. I mean, I guess Daredevil shows up a bit, and I guess that what makes it stick out a little bit for me compared to the third film. But the Hulk stuff was not interesting. This film is just boring. It's not exactly awful, and it is less boring than the next one, but it just doesn't do it for me. Again, I feel like I wouldn't be too hard on these Bill Bixby Hulk films if I'd grown up with the Bill Bixby show, but I didn't. So again, if you love this film, great. I just don't. It just doesn't do it for me. Number 94, Daredevil. Look, I'm well aware this film has its fans and all, and I say this as a fan of Daredevil in the comics. I'm not one of them. It's like they took everything that is interesting about Daredevil and his world and made it uninteresting. From Matt Murdock himself to his origins to the Kingpin to Hell's Kitchen, everything. It also feels kind of overstuffed, as if they're trying to introduce so many things at once, when I felt there was no need to do that in an origin movie, and even then, it just comes off as if it doesn't know what it wants to be. Again, if you love this film, because I know it has a resurgence lately, cool, but I just don't. Number 93, The Invincible Iron Man. Iron Man is another one of my favorite Marvel characters of all time, but this one just felt very bloated. You've got the origin, you've got Stark Industries kicking Tony out, you've got the Mandarin, all this mystical mythology, and they feel like as if they're choking each other out and competing for screen time. None of it feels cohesive, and it just feels very overwhelming and it's not even done in a very interesting way, if you ask me. I do like the animation, but I find this movie overall very bland. I'm sure there are some people who got a kick out of it, but unfortunately, I'm not one of them. Coming in at number 92 is the 1979 Captain America. Like I had said, I give the 1970s Captain America movies a bit more credit for at least trying to give Steve some personality and make him feel more like a human, but the same with the other characters. But again, this one was incredibly weird. There are weird deviations from the source material, which on paper doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It's just here there are connections to the father and more like heritage, and it just didn't really gel well, if you ask me. And there was nothing done that was very interesting, if you ask me. So, again, not really a win for Captain America. Number 91, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. I feel like I'm ranking this one a bit too high compared to where it really should be because this movie is just absolutely boring and forgettable. I guess the fact it didn't really make me angry like some of the ones lower might have justified its placement, but maybe in the future I'll put it lower. But the characters were boring, bland, the story was boring. It just felt like stuff happened and I just failed to care. Again, I'll probably rank this lower if I ever do another of these. Hopefully, I will. But as of now, this one is just bad and boring. It doesn't make me angry, but it doesn't make me feel anything. Number 90, Hulk Where Monsters Dwell. The thing about this one is that for me, it felt more like a Doctor Strange movie that has Hulk's name on the title. It deals with the magic more and whatnot. There is a little bit of looking at Hulk's nightmare and Bruce's nightmare, but overall, it felt like the focus was more on Doctor Strange. I believe this was done because at the time the Doctor Strange MCU movie was coming out, but it just didn't really work for me. And the supporting characters like Man Thing, sorry, weren't really compelling for me. So this one just I'm just like meh. Number 89, Punisher Warzone. I might get a bit of flack for having this one this low, especially since Ray Stevenson is no longer with us. And I do feel a little bad having it this low because of that. But it doesn't change the fact that this didn't really justify why the Punisher is compelling for me because he's still not compelling here. There was a bit of an interesting story of Frank having killed a widow's husband and him having a relationship with that widow and her son. But then Jigsaw was just a nuisance, and the over the top violence again, it just wasn't for me. It kind of felt like a modern version of the 1989 film, just with a bit more substance. But other than that, this one just wasn't for me. Again, if you love it, great. I just don't. Coming in at number 88 is the 1978 Doctor Strange. The best way I can describe this one is it's weird for Marvel's first ever movie, either theatrical or by television. And not because the character is called Doctor Strange, that is understandable. But like every creative choice is extremely weird. The acting and direction feels extremely weird. The story is quite weird and it feels overcomplicated for a simplistic origin story. Not saying they can't be a bit more complex, but this one just felt as if they didn't understand what they were doing. And the romance with the patient kind of felt uncomfortable to me. Again, this one doesn't necessarily make me angry, it just felt weird and is like, to me. Number 87, The Tomb of Dracula. It's kind of a shame I'm ranking this one where I am because I do find Dracula quite compelling. Maybe too sympathetic for a bloodthirsty vampire, but that I'll let that slide. That kind of elevates this film. But he doesn't really feel like the main character. Heck, he barely is the main character. It's usually on the people that are hunting him down and I don't really find them that compelling. And then there's this subplot about Dracula becoming human, which was weird. I guess I'm not ranking it as low as some of the others, is because this was the first ever Marvel animated film, so I'll let it slide a little bit. But overall, good, okay first attempt, but not really something I'm willing to go back to. Number 86, The Incredible Hulk Returns. Admittedly, this one actually has a couple of redeeming qualities compared to its sequels, which makes it a bit more tolerable, not as forgettable, better than awful, just mediocre to me. And that a lot has to do with Eric Allen Kramer as Thor. As someone who grew up on Good Luck Charlie, and it's one of my favorite Disney Channel shows, it was a ton of fun to see a young Eric Allen Kramer play Thor, and I think he pulls it off very well. If this was a Thor film, I would actually be calling it good, but it's not. It's a Hulk film, and the Hulk stuff did not really work for me at all, and that is most of the film. So overall, it's kind of a mediocre experience with a few redeeming qualities for me. Number 85, Ghost Rider. This one is a weird one for me because, on the one hand, it has a nice setup in its first 15 minutes. I would say those first 15 minutes are fine. And I would also say the last 5 to 10 minutes of the film are fine. But everything else in the middle kind of was uninteresting for me and is bogged down by weird direction, weird creative choices, weird acting, especially from Nicolas Cage, as well as a will they won't they romance between Johnny Blaze and the main love interest that kind of made me rub my head. So this one, I feel like there's elements of goodness, but bogged down by weird creative choices which overshadow it and outweigh it. Number 84, X Men Apocalypse. Before this film, I had a somewhat better opinion of the Fox X Men films before this one, even if I still had issues with them. But this was the first one where I went, I did not like this film. And mostly because the positives I had were outweighed by the negatives. I liked the performances, especially from James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender. They're still great in their roles. I also liked Evan Peters as Quicksilver a lot, especially him going fast and the slow motion. That was hilarious. But Apocalypse is a boring villain, which is the opposite of who he should have been if you compare in the comics and in X Men the animated series. And because there is so much action that we barely get to know our new versions of Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Nightcrawler. So there are some high highs, but it's mostly a bunch of low lows for me. Number 83, Frankenstein. This is another weird one for me to rank because, on the one hand, I did kind of like the relationship between the girl and Frankenstein, but one, the girl's name I can barely remember, and second of all, a lot of it kind of does me feel a bit mean spirited. As soon as Frankenstein accidentally hurts someone, the girl does a 180, and it feels, I don't want to say out of place, but it feels very jarring compared to how she acted towards him before. I feel like there could have been a bit more of a middle ground. So overall, Frankenstein, it doesn't make me angry, it just makes me go, whatever. Number 82, Hulk versus Wolverine. I love Christopher Yost, but this is not his finest work, if you ask me. It feels like an episode on one of the shows he was the showrunner on, and even then, not even a good episode. So, I mean, it's just mindless action between Hulk and Wolverine, though at least they're honest about it, unlike some certain other versus films I could name. But the way it's done here just feels very soulless. So I just failed to care about Wolverine and Hulk. I think an episode of Wolverine the X-Men was a better version of this film, so this one kind of feels pointless anyway. Number 81, Spider Man Into the Spider Verse. Longtime viewers of the channel will know that this is my most infamous opinion. I will say, unlike the Sony Spider Man villain films, this one does feel like as if the filmmakers were trying to make a good film. And there are good ideas. It's just I was not really a fan of the execution of either sides of the film it was trying to do, the Miles Morales origin story and the Spider-Verse team-up film. They feel like two films crammed into one, and they're both competing for screen time, both plot lines. And it doesn't help that the Miles Morales stuff felt mean-spirited to me, and the Spider-Verse stuff made most of the Spider people feel like caricatures and not really their own characters. And the third act just did not do it for me. Again, it didn't work for me. So look, if you love this film, great. I just don't. Coming in at number 80 is Blade 2. Like I said before, I'm not a big fan of the Blade films, and this one, it's not awful, it just feels very boring and honestly nothing special. Sure, Blade teams up with a bunch of vampire hunters, and they're like hunting down a new breed of vampires that if you're bitten by one, you don't die, you get turned into a vampire, or at least that's how I understand it. And I'm like, didn't he already fight a bunch of vampires that were like that in the first film? So it makes the film feel extremely repetitive. And you even have a main girl who even gets bitten by a vampire and then gets turned into dust. So it's just not really memorable for me. So I don't enjoy this one. I'm sorry. Number 79, Spider Man Across the Spider Verse. Even though I wasn't a fan of the first Spider-Verse film, I did hope that this would be a massive step up. So the fact that it wasn't and only a little bit kind of made it a big disappointment for me. Now there were improvements, specifically with Gwen Stacy. I felt she was her own character this time around, which is great because I love Haley Steinfeld. And I think the Gwen aspect of this film was strong. And if it had just focused on her, I would be giving this film a thumbs up. But again, the Miles Morales stuff, again, like the first one, felt mean spirited, maybe more so than the last with both of his parents. And then the whole antagonizing Miguel just did not work. And it felt kind of long and kind of antagonized Miguel to make Miles look great. Again, if you love these two movies, great. I just don't. Number 78, Iron Man and Hulk Heroes United. Not much to say about this one, really. It just comes off as bland. There isn't really anything to remember. I mean, it's a fine story, just not very memorable. Nothing about it's memorable. Certainly not the CGI or even the characterization of Iron Man and Hulk. It just feels like a standard team up film that you could find anywhere and it could involve any two heroes. This one just doesn't stick, which is a shame because this is Iron Man and Hulk, two very iconic ones, but the execution just wasn't there. It's like no one was interested. So I don't really have strong feelings for this one. Number 77, Avengers Confidential, Black Widow, and Punisher. I believe we are now in the territory of Marvel films that I consider to be okay, starting with this one. I feel this is very much a mixed bag because, on the one hand, as a Black Widow and Punisher film, it works really well. But as an Avengers film, it does not work because the rest of the Avengers don't even show up until the third act. It mostly focuses on Black Widow and Punisher, which feels okay because again I'm not the biggest fan of the Punisher. Maybe that's why I'm calling it okay. But Black Widow was good, and Frank Castle wasn't bad either. But the Avengers felt very much an afterthought. So I can't rank this one higher. I'm sorry. Number 76, Planet Hulk. Admittedly, I haven't read the original Planet Hulk story in the comics, but I feel as an adaptation from my little knowledge, and I think I know relatively what the story was in the comics. I feel this is a fine adaptation. It just doesn't feel as if it's invoking much emotion. I don't really have strong feelings for it either way. I don't hate it. It doesn't make me angry, which is good, but it doesn't if- in, invoke any emotion out of me. So I don't love it. As an adaptation, it's fine. The characterization of Hulk is fine. It's good. But overall, this one's very much okay. We're now in the top 75 with Marvel Superhero Adventures Frostbite. I ended up enjoying this one a lot more than I thought I would. I thought that I was really not going to like this one, but there was actually some funny moments that I ended up enjoying. I thought there were some funny lines. Tony went on a pretty good arc. It's not exactly what I look for superhero films, and I think the fact that it's kind of linked to Avengers Assemble, which I wasn't exactly keen on, though it could have gotten better if I go back to it, but as of now, it wasn't my thing. But this one, it was alright. It wasn't anything special, it was just a fun Christmas film. And I think that aspect it did pretty well, so it's fine for what it is. Coming in at number 74 is the 1978 Toei Spider Man film. Your enjoyment of this one will very much depend on your tastes and preferences and what you like. Because I will admit, and this does lose a bit, quite a few points, that is not really like anything of Spider Man in the comics or other media. But it does have a lot of tropes that we find nowadays in Sentai and Power Rangers. In fact, I believe it founded a lot of these tropes. So we kind of have that to thank, and as a big Power Rangers fan, I can find enjoyment out of this one. So yes, it's not really the most Spider-Man-esque. I found it okay for what it is. It was a simplistic story that was enjoyable for what it was. Number 73, Iron Man and Captain America Heroes United. Yes, I do think this was an improvement over the first Heroes United installment. Maybe because I feel Iron Man and Captain America have a better dynamic. Not to mention, the Hulk himself even cameos in this film. So it makes for a more memorable experience for me. It's nothing wow out of this world, but it was a bit more memorable, and I can remember Hydra were in this and were the villains. So overall, this wasn't a great experience, but it was a decent one and at least more memorable compared to the first Heroes United. Number 72, Next Avengers Heroes of Tomorrow. This is one that I often struggle to figure out where I want to put this because, on the one hand, I think it has a decent story and a good likability with our new protagonists who are the legacies and children of the Avengers. On the other hand, it feels like a sequel to a film we never got, that we're just told stuff in flashbacks. Though at least Tony and Bruce are briefly in this film, especially in the case of Tony, so it gives a sense of legacy. But again, this is a very difficult one for me to say is great, just because it feels like a sequel to a film that never happened. But overall, it's okay. Number 71, Werewolf by Night. If there was any proof that horror just is not for me, it's with Werewolf by Night. It's an okay film, mostly because I like the aesthetic and how it looks, but I just did not care about the characters or the story. It just felt bland to me. I kind of got bored watching it. I'm sorry, I know a bunch of you love this and love its creativity, but this one just wasn't for me. I can barely remember any of the characters' names, and it just wasn't to my taste. Look, if you love this, great. I'm not going to stop you. This is just my least favorite entry in the entire MCU. Coming in at number 70 is the original Blade. I know, controversial to have Blade this below, but honestly, like I said, horror's just not my thing, so I don't think I was ever going to love the original Blade anyway. I can appreciate what it did for comic book movies, kind of reignited passion and desire from movie-going audiences, and it was the first Marvel film to not be garbage or bad. But overall, this movie just wasn't for me. There are things I like about it, but I wasn't really invested in the story until the second half. And it's very standalone, so I appreciate that. But otherwise, look, if you love this, great. This for me is somewhat decent, just okay. Number 69, The New Mutants. It's just a weird one for me because there are things I appreciate about it. I think the story is fine. It's quite psychological, getting inside these kids' heads, and some of their powers are pretty cool. But the haunted house stuff, as well as the fact that the way it looks kind of feels very drab. It feels like as if it's harkening back to the early days of the Fox X-Men franchise when they were kind of embarrassed to be superhero films. Though I feel like this was kind of worse because there were like no costumes at all. But overall, this is an okay mid film. It's nothing great, it's just not terrible, it's okay. Number 68, Elektra. I imagine many of you are going to tell me that I have this one way too high for it being in the middle, but that's fine. I don't think Elektra is necessarily an underrated gem. I just did not find myself disliking it as much as many people did. I think the story is fine as an arc for Elektra, and I do kind of like the relationship she builds with this other girl. But I think the thing that holds this film back by a significant margin is the supernatural stuff. I did not find them very interesting, and they didn't really explain it very well. I mean, not everyone reads the Elektra comics, me included. So this one I think is decent, just nothing great. Number 67, Doctor Strange the Sorcerer Supreme. I've always debated how I feel about this one because I think the first act and the second act are done very well, and it's a decent adaptation of Doctor Strange's origin, a pretty good one actually. Even diving into how he failed to save his sister. It's just the middle section wasn't as interesting as the opening and closing sections. So this one I like the animation, I like the voice acting. This one could have been higher for me if I dug into the second act more, but unfortunately I didn't, so this one is decent, not great, unfortunately. Number 66, Spider Man 2. Look, I grew up with the Sam Raimi Spider Man movies, and I loved all three of them as a kid. It's just now that I'm older, I find myself not loving Spider Man 2 anymore, and I actually have quite a few issues. Now, look, the action sequences are amazing, especially the train scene. J.K. Simmons, he kills it as J. Jonah Jameson. Alfred Molina, he's having a ton of fun as Doc Ock. The problem is mostly due with the story, specifically the romance and Peter losing his powers because he's deep down doesn't want to be Spider Man. For me, it doesn't really make that much sense. And again, Mary Jane might be at her worst in this trilogy, in this film. So, look, I do enjoy watching Spider Man 2. It is enjoyable for me. I just don't love it anymore. Sorry, guys. Number 65, Hulk vs. Thor. Yeah, between the two Hulk versus films, I actually enjoyed this one more. Mostly because I think Hulk and Thor have a somewhat better dynamic in this film compared to Hulk and Wolverine in the Hulk versus Wolverine film. As well as that, I feel like there was a bit more story velocity. I think the Thor side actually is pretty effective. And even the Hulk side, it was a bit more psychological. It even gets into Banner's head of him trying to have a normal life. So I feel like this is somewhat more like what I'd expect from Christopher Yost. So overall, it's not perfect. It's not exactly great. It doesn't scream great, but it's an enjoyable watch, and I can appreciate that. Number 64, X Men Origins Wolverine. Hear me out. I am in no way, shape, or form saying that X Men Origins Wolverine is a misunderstood masterpiece. It does have its problems, specifically some scenes last for too little rather than them being a bit more fleshed out. And I am not defending what they did to Deadpool. That is unacceptable. But I honestly don't mind Wolverine's arc in this film, and it is an entertaining film. It moves at a fast pace that I can't really get bored, even if I think some scenes should have been fleshed out rather than montaging through the brotherhood of Wolverine and Sabretooth. Granted, I did enjoy that relationship. So look, X-Men Origins Wolverine is by no way, shape, or form underrated or a masterpiece. It's just decent. I enjoy it. Number 63, Marvel Rising Secret Warriors. This was a pretty entertaining showcase of some of the more obscure and weirder heroes in the Marvel Universe. But I do like how on point Miss Marvel's character is. Kamala Khan does feel like the Kamala Khan that we typically find, where she's a bit of a fangirl. I also really enjoyed Squirrel Girl. She was actually quite the treat. The story isn't exactly groundbreaking, but I did end up with a smile on my face. So, admittedly, I can see myself bumping this one a bit higher in the future, or maybe a few placements higher. But as of now, I feel comfortable putting it here, saying that Marvel Rising Secret Warriors is decent. Coming in at number 62 is the original Hulk from 2003. Admittedly, I feel a bit conflicted on this one because there is quite a few things to like about this film and to appreciate, but then there are things that I'm like, maybe you should have reworked this in the editing. For example, I do like that this is a more psychological focus on Bruce Banner. Even with changes to the source material, I think the cast do an excellent job, especially Eric Bana, Jennifer Connelly, etc. But I think the pacing was way too slow, especially at the beginning. It does pick up when Bruce finally becomes the Hulk and becomes a bit more exciting, but the pacing did kind of hurt. Overall, I think this is a decent watch and a bit overhated. Number 61, The Incredible Hulk. I feel like this one has strengths over the Ang Lee Hulk, but it also has some weaknesses. For example, I think the pacing in this one is actually better than Ang Lee's, and the cast do a great job with the material they're given. But I feel like this story is so focused on Banner on the run looking for a cure that it doesn't really give time to breathe and to let us get to know this Bruce Banner very well. It just assumes everyone knows who the Hulk is, and I get it, but it doesn't really give time to breathe and give more character modes, even if some of them are good. And honestly, I think the third act battle lasted a bit too long. So overall, Incredible Hulk is a decent watch. I just don't think it's as underrated or overhated as people make it out to be now. Coming in at number 60 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I know a bunch of you love this film and insist that I should be putting it higher, but I'm sorry. While this movie definitely has its highs, I'm sorry, it's complemented by quite a few lows and probably some of the lowest lows in the entire MCU. While I do love the relationship between Star Lord and Gamora, and honestly, I love Gamora in general, I think she is the best part of all of the Guardians films. Rocket is being an idiot. He is responsible for the entire plot of this film. If he had installed those batteries, Yondu would have still been alive by the end of the film. And then you get into stuff like the ego reveal, I don't think worked as well as some people hoped it would be. And it's so mean spirited that I can't find myself loving this film. It can be entertaining at times, but overall, I just don't love this one. Number 59, Spider Man 3. This is a total guilty pleasure of mine. I know it's not very good, but I can't help but be entertained and enjoy this one. Yes, it has its issues. Peter and Mary Jane are being a pretty toxic couple, as well as some stupid moments like Harry getting amnesia and it's the stuff with Topher Grace's Venom. I do quite like him as Eddie Brock, but Venom, forget about it. But I actually really like the third act, and I like how these different plot lines and villains are brought together by the theme of forgiveness. Peter has to forgive Sandman, Harry has to forgive Peter, and Peter and Mary Jane have to forgive each other. And like I said, there is some stuff like Emo Peter is so bad, it's actually quite funny. So for me, this is an entertaining film. It's not very good, but it's a guilty pleasure. I enjoy it. Number 58, Kick Ass 2. What some of you might not know is that when the Kick Ass graphic novel, first came out, it was under, I believe, Marv Comics, which was a Marvel imprint at the time. So I guess I could count this as a Marvel film. Anyway, Kick Ass 2, there is a lot of entertainment. I do like the revenge story of the villain, and I do quite like uh, Hickass's story, and it was tragic when he lost his father. But the stuff with Hit Girl, and specifically the implied romance between her and Kick-Ass, did not work for me. But the ending was solid and it felt grandiose. So this one is entertaining, just very flawed if you ask me. Number 57, For the Dark World. Yes, I still think this is the weakest out of the four films in the MCU. With that said, I do think this film is a tad bit overhated. I think the acting is very good, the action is really good, and there is a solid story in there even if it's not the best executed. I feel like they bumped up the action in this film to cover up that the story wasn't exactly fleshed out. And the Dark Elves, I think, suffered because of that. they weren't fleshed out, and it was kind of hard to understand them. With all that being said, the buddy cop banter between Thor and Loki is very good, and the humor still works, even if this film was a bit too serious. Overall, For the Dark World is a decent time. It's decent, just not great. Number 56, the original Doctor Strange. By this, I mean the original of the Doctor Strange films in the MCU. Those of you who have watched my channel since the beginning know that I have a pretty lowish opinion of the first Doctor Strange. I have grown a little bit of an appreciation, mostly because of Multiverse of Madness. I think the visuals are fantastic. The acting, especially Benedict Cumberbatch and Tilda Swinton, is great. The problem is, I feel like they made Strange a bit too arrogant that I found myself actually rooting against the guy. I also think Rachel McAdams was wasted in this film, and I did not find myself invested in the origin story as much. But the third act was funny, even if the rest of the humor didn't land for me. So this one I've grown a bit of an appreciation, but it's still not a favorite. I cannot call this one underrated. Number 55, Ultimate Avengers, the movie. This is a very enjoyable Avengers film and animated film. I think they got Captain America's origins right. That was very interesting. And the way that they brought the Avengers, I thought was very cool. The thing that holds this film back is that I think the middle act is not as interesting as the first and third act. With all that being said, this is a very enjoyable film. Even if I found Hank Pym kind of unlikable, though that might be a trend with how he is in the comics, I still really like this film and I do recommend it. It might not be a favorite, but I think this was a good step in the right direction for the Avengers franchise. Number 54, X Men The Last Stand. I view X Men The Last Stand in a somewhat similar vein to how I view Spider Man 3. It is a significantly flawed film, specifically how it handles the Phoenix Saga, Cyclops' death, even though they barely did anything with him throughout the trilogy, so it was hard to care about it. And honestly, I would say even Xavier's death and Juggernaut was poorly treated. But on the other hand, I think this is actually a very enjoyable film. I think the action is top notch. It's very good. I love the performances, and I do like the mutant cure storyline in this film. In fact, I would say if this film focused more on the mutant cure, this might have been one of my favorite X Men films. But as it is, it's highly flawed, but I enjoy X Men The Last Stand. Number 53, Eternals. This is another tricky one where I'm kind of split because there are so many great things about Eternals, but I feel like there are things that they needed to work on. Admittedly, I think Eternals suffers from the fact that it has 10 new characters introducing at once, when I think it would have been better if it was a TV show. But on the other hand, I think the direction of Chloe Zhao and the acting are amazing. I also really like the way the movie looks. This is a very gorgeous looking film. And there are good concepts in there about questioning whether it's right for these immortal beings to interfere in humanity. I like that aspect a lot. But overall, I think Eternals is a decent film. Not the best, but not the worst. That I think needed a bit of fine tuning. Number 52, the original X Men. Similar to Eternals, I think the first X Men does so many things right, but it also does some things that I'm not really a big fan of. While I really like the relationship between Wolverine and Rogue, big brother, little sister, I think Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen are fantastic in these roles. I also really love Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. And the story, I think, is actually pretty good. I think it holds up quite well and it built an amazing world. I feel like the other X Men characters were not utilized very well. Cyclops, in particular, gets the short end of the stick. Even Storm and Jean Grey was just like a token love interest. So I'm not a fan of that. I'm also not a fan of the black leather suits. I understand why it was like that at the time, but I do think it caused the ripple effect that we see in the Nolan Batman films, New Mutants, where these films are kind of embarrassed to be superhero films, but overall, I still enjoyed the first X Men. Number 51 is the original Guardians of the Galaxy. Those of you who know me know that I think this is the most overrated film in the MCU, despite my newfound trust in James Gunn after his Superman film. With that said, there is a lot to enjoy about Guardians of the Galaxy. I still think this is a very good film. I really enjoyed the relationship between Star-Lord and Gamora. I do like that chemistry between them. I also enjoyed Rocket and Groot in this film a bit more than in the sequel. Well, Rocket. Baby Groot still clears. I just felt Drax didn't need to be part of the film. I felt he was kind of shoehorned there just to be the strong man, even though Groot could have easily been there. But the music is still amazing, and I still think it's a very enjoyable film. I just never had it as one of my favorites, and I think I have more issues than most other people do with it. Okay, we have officially entered the top 50 with the 2004 Punisher movie. While I can understand why a lot of hardcore Punisher fans might be bothered by this film, at the same time, you need to remember I never really found the Punisher appealing. He's one of my least favorite Marvel characters. So the fact that this is a more sympathetic and human Punisher, I found that appealing. Not to mention, it's not over the top violent like the other versions of the Punisher, at least in his solo stories. So I appreciate that. It focused more on a human side of him that I feel we don't really get much of. So I appreciate this film for what it is. Sure, the beginning was a bit weird and it's not one I would necessarily rewatch, but I enjoyed this one. Number 49, Ultimate Avengers 2, Rise of the Panther. I really think that this is a very good win for the Marvel animated movies because it's like it took the faults of the original Ultimate Avengers film while improving on the stuff that worked and didn't work. For example, I found Hank Pym slightly more likable in this film compared to in the first film, to the point that when he died, I kind of felt something. I also think it got Black Panther's origins right, and the dynamic between him and Captain America was done very well. There is a lot to enjoy about Ultimate Avengers 2, and the story is actually very enjoyable. This is a very enjoyable film, so I'd give this one a thumbs up. Number 48, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Yes, I am one of the few people on the planet that actually prefers the Doctor Strange sequel over the first one, of the MCU ones at least. And this is coming from someone who's quite hot and cold on Sam Raimi. I am not a Sam Raimi stan, but I found this one more enjoyable. The humor I felt worked better here than in the first one. Rachel McAdams I thought was better utilized here, and I found Wanda more interesting as a villain compared to Mad Mikkelsen's character. As well as that, I thought Doctor Strange was more rootable here, and more Wong, and I liked America Chavez. Yes, the multiverse concept may have not been as grandiose as we expected, but I found Multiverse of Madness enjoyable. Not the greatest, but far from the worst. Speaking of Sam Raimi, number 47 is his original Spider Man. Yes, I think this is the Sam Raimi Spider Man film that has held up the best. I think it's a solid origin story that I quite enjoy, even if I wasn't the biggest fan of the fact that Peter decides to go into wrestling just to win enough money to impress Mary Jane. But other than that, this is a very enjoyable story, and the cast is very good. They're having a ton of fun, especially Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn and J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. Great casting in both departments. James Franco is very good as Harry Osborn. Tobey Maguire wasn't too sold on his Spider-Man, but his Peter Parker is very good, and this is the most tolerable Kirsten Dunst's Mary Jane has been for me. The CGI doesn't necessarily hold up, but other than that, I think on a story, this movie does hold up pretty well. Number 46 is X Men Days of Future Past. I imagine many of you will have this in your top 20 or even top 10, so this will probably be a controversial take. But don't get it twisted, I think Days of Future Past is a very, very good film. It deals with the theme of hope very well, losing hope, gathering hope again. The novelty of seeing Patrick Stewart's Charles with James McAvoy's was very good, and the Magneto turns villain arc that Michael Fassbender's Magneto goes through is very good. The story is very good, and Hugh Jackman works well with both iterations of Professor X as well as their respective supporting characters. I just feel it kind of felt more like a Wolverine film guest starring the X-Men again, and I thought we had moved past that. But regardless, I still enjoy Days of Future Past. Number 45, Iron Man Rise of Technovore. I actually find this anime movie to be quite underrated. I think it had a very solid story of Tony on the run and made a very good use of his supporting characters, showing the friendship between him and Rhodey, how much it means to him, and the way it utilizes the Punisher, I thought was pretty well done. Same with Hawkeye. And Tony and Pepper have pretty good banter. I think it's a good mix of edginess with a bit of MCU inspiration. So this one worked for me. Admittedly, I haven't seen the Iron Man anime, but this film has encouraged me to maybe give it a shot one day. So who knows? Hopefully I'll enjoy it. But as for now, Iron Man Rise of Technovore is pretty enjoyable. Number 44, X2 X-Men United. I feel most of us can actually agree that this is one of those rare sequels that improves on the first film and is better in pretty much every way. Now, I do feel Cyclops was even more undercooked than he was in the first film. Of course, Cyclops. But I do think Storm was better utilized here. And I do love the kill all the mutants, kill all the humans narrative and showing how brutal Weapon X was, the inclinations to Wolverine's backstory, and the relationship between Rogue and Iceman. I really liked. I especially love the scene where they go to Iceman's house. I actually find that to be an underrated scene. So X2 X2 United, very enjoyable and improves on the first film in pretty much every way. Number 43, Kick Ass. Admittedly, I think this movie is a bit overrated. With that said, it is still a very, very enjoyable film. Very postmodern in many ways and self aware, setting heroes in the actual real world with references to Batman and Spider Man, and I enjoyed that. The love story I also quite enjoyed, and Kick-Ass himself was a pretty well likable character. Hit Girl's pretty enjoyable, so is Nicolas Cage's character, and the villain is actually pretty good. So there is a lot to enjoy about the first Kick-Ass. So Matthew Vaughn, I think you did a very good job with this one. Coming in at number 42 is the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. This was the beginning of me doing a bit of a turnaround on James Gunn, where I started to have a bit of a higher opinion, which is exactly what he needed from me at this point, since it was around the time it was announced he was going to be head of DC and reboot the whole thing. Because this was a very, very enjoyable film. I think it did a lot for Mantis, making her very compelling and very sweet, going out of her way and all that trouble just to make Star-Lord happy. I think that was very sweet. And when he finds out that she's actually his sister, and the way he's like, that's the best Christmas present anyone could ask for, that was also sweet. This was a very wholesome film, and I really enjoyed for that. Number 41, Iron Man 2. I find this one to be pretty overhated. Personally, I find this to be a very enjoyable time. The banter, the humor, it's extremely entertaining. It's also a very entertaining film. Not to mention it gave us Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow. Tony and Pepper are very much acting like a married couple here, even though this was like 9 years before Endgame came out. And it's extremely enjoyable. The action, even if there isn't enough action, the action is very enjoyable. Even if Whiplash wasn't the most memorable Iron Man villain or the most memorable MCU villain, I did enjoy Justin Hammer. And Tony worried that he'd die and try and find a new element. That was enjoyable. So this might not be the most rewatchable film in the MCU, but it's definitely an entertaining one when I do rewatch it. Number 40, Captain America the Winter Soldier. Those of you who know me know that I think this movie is a bit overrated, but in my opinion, it's still a very, very good film, almost great. I love the banter between Steve and Natasha. I love the chemistry between Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson. I love the clash of ideologies between Cap and Nick Fury. The action is excellent, and I love the speeches Cap makes about being inspirational. They're very inspirational. The problem is the subtitle is Winter Soldier, yet the Winter Soldier himself feels like the B plot, and he doesn't have much screen time. He doesn't feel like the actual main villain. I feel like if they had given him more screen time, then yeah, I would be calling this movie great. But as of now, I think this is almost great, just not quite there. Number 39, Four Tales of Asgard. A really, really fun kind of Thor prequel establishing how he was when he was younger, a bit more reckless, a bit more bombastic. Granted, we see that he's often still very bombastic when he's older. But this was also a nice story about the brotherly bond between him and Loki. I've always liked that about Thor, and the Dark Elves, I think, were done very, very well, better than in the Dark World, and it made for a very good kind of coming of age story for Thor. So I think this is pretty underrated, and I highly recommend you watch it. I give a thumbs up. Number 38, Captain America Brave New World. While in some cases I can see what people are saying, how it's more like a Hulk film disguised in as a Captain America film, where there are Hulk elements in it. At the same time, I really enjoyed this film for what it was. I think it shows Sam coming into his own as Captain America, as his own Captain America. I really loved Harrison Ford's performance as General Ross, him as president, as well as him turning into the Red Hulk. That was an interesting plot point that I think worked well, where Sam was trying to reason with Tim, and I think he captures the spirit of Captain America very well. So, all things considered, I enjoyed this one quite enough. Number 37, Deadpool 2. A very, very, very entertaining film. It's funny, it's action packed, it has a lot of great humor, a pretty good story. I quite like the story. Sure, it can feel like as if they're going even more bonkers, as if they're doing a lot of things at once, but I think it fits into Deadpool's bonkers personality, so I don't mind this. I find this a very enjoyable film. Maybe not one I would rewatch too often, but whenever I do watch it, I never get bored. I really enjoy. And the new side characters were very enjoyable, especially Cable. I thought he was very interesting, and so was Russell. So, Deadpool 2 is a win. Number 36, Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer. Don't take this the wrong way. I fully agree that Galactus was completely butchered in this film and was a complete waste of the character, with him just being a giant space cloud trying to engulf the Earth without having him how he looks in the comics. But taking that aside, I really enjoyed this film. I really enjoyed the personalities and the story, the wedding, the team's different responsibilities, and how they respond to them. As well as that, I enjoyed the Silver Surfer, and I do enjoy the stakes of the third act. So there is, I think, a lot more to enjoy from this film. Again, take Galactus out, and I think you have a very, very enjoyable film. Number 35, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This is the film that ultimately made me excited for James Gunn's DCU because this very much made me care about the Guardians in a way that the first two didn't particularly do. While I did still find Nebula annoying, the other characters I thought were enjoyable, and I really felt sorry for them. I think this is the Rocket we should have gotten in Guardians 2. Gamora, as great as always. I really enjoy Star Lord. and Mantis, and the story of redemption and their backstory of Rocket. Why didn't we get this sooner? With all that being said, this was still a nice treat and made me excited for what James Gunn had in store for the DCU. So I really love this film. Number 34, The Wolverine. I've said this multiple times in the past. I think this is the most underrated superhero film of all time. I know a lot of people had a problem with the third act, and sure, it gets a bit cheesy, but it didn't really do it. It didn't really ruin it for me. And I really liked Wolverine's story as well as the relationship he had with Mariko. That was actually very compelling and definitely the best relationship he's had in any of the live action films. And I really enjoyed the story of him just wanting to find peace, his arc. Yukio was also a very enjoyable character, and Wolverine coming to peace and finding some happiness was actually quite refreshing. So I really do recommend The Wolverine for those of you who have been a bit dismissive of it. Number 33, The Amazing Spider Man 2. I get it, this is a very controversial pick because this is considered by many people to be the worst Spider Man film. And to each their own. And I get it, there are a lot of plot lines, I am not denying that. But for me, kind of similar to the theme of forgiveness in Spider Man 3, I feel like all of these plot lines are brought together by the theme of hope. Can Spider Man give people hope? And more importantly, can he give himself hope? This is reflected in characters like Gwen, Electro, Harry Osborn, that little kid, and it also helps that the performances, especially Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, but even Sally Field and Dane DeHaan are fantastic, and it's a very heartfelt film. Plus, that ending with Gwen's death was amazing, and Spider-Man coming back out of retirement to fulfill his role as Spider-Man, I thought was well done. So, I really like this film. I think the positives far outweigh any negatives. Coming in at number 32 is the original Deadpool. What can I even say about this film that hasn't been said already? There is a revenge story, a love story. It's an extremely funny film, and it's also a very simple film. It's a simple revenge and love story that deals with cancer and deformity that I thought was done very well. The reason why I don't have this higher is because I don't find myself rewatching it as much. But whenever I do, it puts a smile on my face, and I think the original Deadpool still holds up. The jokes are hilarious. Ryan Reynolds was perfect for this role, and the small references to the wider Fox X Men universe was fantastic. So this one I think deserves a lot of praise. Number 31, Avengers Age of Ultron. The weakest of the four Avengers films thus far, yet I still think this is a great film. I really love how character driven this is. I didn't really find the story confusing. I do think Quicksilver was a bit wasted, but I love how it carries on the themes and the relationships and character dynamics of the first Avengers films. I think the interactions are fantastic and how it gets into the Avengers' minds. I actually quite liked James Spader as Ultron, and Scarlet Witch was a great addition. I also thought this was the best Hawkeye has been in the MCU before his own show, which, as you know, I'm a huge fan of. So yeah, I think Age of Ultron is a very underappreciated film. Coming in at number 30 is the 2005 Fantastic Four. Yes, I am a defender of this film. I find this film overhated because for me, it's just a ton of a fun film. I think it actually does the Fantastic Four's origin quite well, and even some of the deviations it makes to the comics, I think work within the context, such as the relationship between Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman. But at the end of the day, it's still there, and when Reed proposes to Sue at the end, I honestly love that scene. Chris Evans is a ton of fun as Johnny Storm, and I really love Michael Chiklis as the Thing. Heck, Ione Grufford is still my favorite live action Reed Richards. I thought he was excellent. And I enjoyed the story. And Julian McMahon, may you rest in peace. You were great as Doctor Doom. So I will actually defend this film. Number 29, Thunderbolts. Admittedly, I find this movie to be slightly overrated by the fandom, mostly because I thought that the first half not much happens other than the team meeting up. It felt like it could have been just one scene. But with that said, I still think this is a great film. Florence Pugh gives a phenomenal performance, probably one of her best ever. I think she might have been robbed of an Oscar. The rest of the Thunderbolts play off each other very well, and you can see how they're rough around the edges. And I love that Bucky is a mentor to them because he knows what it's like to be in that rough around the edges place because he was in that dark place back when he was the Winter Soldier killing people. And Red Guardian was also a delight, and having that conversation with Yelena was awesome. So, even if I find this movie slightly overrated, I still think Thunderbolts is great. Number 28, Iron Man 3. Those of you who know me know that I'm a massive defender of this film, and I will continue defending it. Something I love about the Iron Man films is how character driven they are, and they're done very well. I feel like this brings Tony's personal story in the MCU full circle. He had to lose everything from his mansion to his suits not working properly. He had to rely on his brains to be the hero this time, and I think it paid off very well. Admittedly, I found the Mandarin twist to be quite funny, though I can understand why it ticked a lot of people off. But I think within the context of this universe, it worked. And Robert Downey Jr. gives a phenomenal performance as well. I also kind of liked Audric Killian as the villain. So I love the story, how character driven it was for Tony. So I will defend Iron Man 3. Number 27, Black Panther Wakanda Forever. This was the most difficult film Marvel probably had to put out because they had to rewrite the entire script because of Chadwick Boseman's unfortunate passing. And it is still sad to me to this day. With that said, this movie really paid off. I said this in the past and I will continue saying I think Letitia Wright was robbed of an Oscar, as was Angela Bassett. I think the story, while it did take its time to find its footing at first, once they reintroduced Shuri, I think it takes its footing very well. I also really love the use of Nakia. And you know what? I didn't mind Ironheart. I found Namor to be an interesting villain, and Letitia Wright as Shuri really held her own as her own Black Panther, and I really appreciate that she dedicated her performance to Chadwick. So this is a very, very emotional film. Number 26, The Marvels. I think this is one of the most overhated films in the entire MCU. I found this to be such a fun film. The chemistry and banter between our three girls, Brie Larson, Iman Vellani, and Teyona Paris, was excellent. They have amazing chemistry, and the story that they shared together, I also thought worked very well. Of them protecting the scrolls from any remaining Kree, as well as that, the story that they go on why Carol had been gone for so long, and Monica revealing that she was never expecting her to be perfect, and Kamala still liking her even though she's not perfect. I thought that was very wholesome. I personally felt this was a wholesome film, and I will actually defend it. We are officially in the top 25 with Black Widow. Another film that I think has been unfairly hated over the past few years. Now, yes, I'm not necessarily going to defend what they did with Taskmaster. While I can understand it works within the context of the film, it was a bit disappointing. But otherwise, this is an extremely heartfelt film with an amazing sisterhood story and an amazing family story with Natasha rekindling with her past and rekindling with her family. That last hug they share after the final battle was very heartfelt, and the relationship between Natasha and Yelena was amazing. So I will actually continue defending Black Widow. Number 24, Captain America the First Avenger. I've said multiple times in the past that I think this is one of the most underrated superhero films of all time. It actually amazes me that many people slept on this film when it came out because if you ask me, you have a wonderful origin story, one of my favorite superhero movie origin stories. You got a wonderful relationship between Steve and Peggy, a wonderful friendship between Steve and Bucky, a wonderful friendship with Howard Stark, and a wonderful character study for Steve Rogers. This is an amazing character driven film that shows just what a good person he is. And when he makes his sacrifice, sacrificing his date with Peggy, it's actually quite sad, which comes full circle when he goes back to her in Endgame. So I will forever continue saying that I love the first Captain America. Coming in at number 23 is the original Thor. Another very underrated superhero film. Again, like with Captain America the First Avenger, I love how character driven this was, how the action took a bit of a backseat, even though there is a lot of really good action, even though it's not as much as many people perhaps hoped for, but it was the character driven stuff, for needing to be humbled. And the fish out of water stuff is very entertaining. I think people forget how bombastic this film actually was. Kenneth Branagh's Shakespearean bombastic style gels very much into this film, and it works. And the family story of Thor and Odin and Loki is the heart of this film. And I also liked Thor's relationship with the human friends he made, like Jane, Darcy, and Eric. So, again, I'm a defender of this film. Number 22, Deadpool and Wolverine. What can I even say about this film that hasn't been said already? This is absolutely entertaining. The banter between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman is on fire. And the fan surface I thought was done very well. Even as someone who wasn't the biggest fan of the Blade films, I enjoyed seeing Wesley Snipe. Elektra was a nice addition. And seeing Daphne Khan again as X-23 was an absolute treat, and I love the conversation she has with Logan. Speaking of which, I loved how this was a great return for Hugh Jackman's Wolverine without undoing his satisfying send off in Logan. This was fantastic, and it was a great story for both Deadpool and Wolverine. One about redemption and one about saving the multiverse. It works and is kind of a great love letter to the Fox X Men films. Number 21, X Men First Class. I find this film slightly underappreciated as it had a tendency to be in the shadow of both Days of Future Past and Logan. But First Class was the first time I felt we got a true, proper X Men film because it focused on the team. Sure, there was a bit more of a focus on Charles Xavier and Magneto and even Mystique, but they rock and their interactions with the rest of the team and the rest of the first class of X-Men was fantastic. That scene where they're showing off their powers, I love it. And the interactions between Charles and Magneto is fantastic. James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender are excellent in these roles. And say what you like about Jennifer Lawrence in the later films, she cares and she's clearly having a lot of fun in this one. So I think we should cherish First Class properly and even more. Coming in at number 20 is the original Ant Man. I may have described some of the previous entries using the same term, but I don't care. I think Ant Man is a severely underrated film. What I love about it is that it's a simple superhero origin story that keeps the stakes personal and small. Sure, its structure can be reminiscent of the formula founded by the first Iron Man, but I feel it works here a lot better than it did in the first Doctor Strange for me is because I felt that Scott Lang was a very rootable character. Also helped that Paul Rudd is just completely likable in any role he's in. He's fantastic in his role from his comedic timing, and he does the emotional scenes very well. Same with Michael Douglas and Evangeline Lilly. I've grown an appreciation for Darren Cross's Yellow Jacket, and the father and son story, which becomes the center of this whole Ant Man trilogy, is just so endearing to me. Number 19, for Ragnarok. Yes, I personally think that this movie deserves every ounce of praise it gets. It's one of the funniest films in the MCU. It's so quotable. It's so full of energy, and this is what the 4 franchise needed after The Dark World was not a terrible film, not even a bad film, but just an inferior film compared to the first 4. Again, Chris Hemsworth gives one of his best performances as Thor. It also helps that his comedic timing is right there and was kind of robbed of an Oscar for his performance here. Hela is an amazing villain, and the supporting characters are great too. From Valkyrie, Hulk's story is really good. Korg was a great addition. I don't like how they killed off the Warriors 3. I've said this multiple times, but pushing that aside, I think Thor Ragnarok is a great film and worthy of the praise it gets. Coming in at number 18 is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. When it comes to these C-listers or D-listers of superheroes and taking them to the same heights as some of the big boys like Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, now Iron Man and the Hulk, I would say the Guardians, for me, walked so that Shang-Chi could run. I did not expect to love this film at all. Not only is it filled with so much style, great choreography, but it has amazing arc for Shang-Chi, great supporting characters in Katie, his sister, a lovely family story between Shang-Chi and his dad and his sister, reconciling their relationships after their mother died, and about hope. It's a very, very worthy film of its praise, if you ask me. I will continue loving Shang-Chi. Number 17, Captain Marvel. I've said this multiple times. I think Captain Marvel is one of the most overhated and misunderstood superhero movies of all time. I really enjoyed this quieter, character focused buddy cop film and journey that Carol goes through. Brie Larson and Samuel Jackson have amazing chemistry. Also helps that they're great friends in real life. And I enjoyed Carol's journey of learning who she is, realizing that she was told one thing and she thought her friends were one thing, but realized that the people who are there for her are a completely different group. She overcame herself of becoming a weapon. I just feel people spread lies about this film, and I'm getting sick of it. I will continue forever defending this film because I don't think it deserves all the hate it is. I personally love this film. Number 16, Spider Man Homecoming. If I'm being honest, I find this movie to be a bit underappreciated, though I do love whenever I see love thrown at this film. I think Spider Man Homecoming is a wonderful, back to basics, but also refreshing take on Spider Man. Tom Holland is perfect for the role. I think he has a lot of charisma and awkwardness to him. Michael Keaton as the Vulture is a fantastic villain. And I love Peter realizing what really makes Spider-Man? Is it the suit or is it his morals? And the fact that this is a street level film that focuses on looking at the ordinary person, it gives a new look to the MCU. So this is refreshing both as a Spider-Man film and an MCU film. And I personally think Spider-Man Homecoming deserves the praise. Number 15, The Avengers. This film was truly revolutionary, and I consider it a classic at this point. It was the first time we saw different heroes from different movies cross over to team up and form a team, the Avengers. And what I love about the Avengers is that, okay, Hawkeye got the short end of the stick because he spent most of the film being mind controlled by Loki. But other than that, the rest of the Avengers is very balanced in terms of focus. And even then, Hawkeye does get some shiny moments. There's the iconic shot where he jumps off the building, and that third act battle is fantastic, especially the iconic moment where the camera goes around the team and they're ready to battle. That is fantastic. Joss Whedon's writing is amazing, and the way the characters interact and quip with each other, phenomenal. This has some of my favorite scenes in the entire MCU, so there's something truly special about the first Avengers film. Coming in at number 14 is the original Black Panther. I've seen many people call this the most overrated film of the MCU, and I respectfully disagree. I think Black Panther is truly phenomenal. I love the style, Ryan Coogler brings to it. The supporting cast are fantastic and truly entertaining, especially Latita Writer Shuri. She brings a great comedic side to this film. And Chadwick Boseman, may you rest in peace. Even 5 years later, I still can't believe you're gone. It gives a phenomenal performance. And Michael B. Jordan is fantastic as Killmonger, probably one of my favorite villains in the MCU, where he loses and you root against him because he does dangerous stuff, but you understand where he's coming from. So he wins a moral victory. And T'Challa and him change Wakanda for the better. It makes you question the morals of Wakanda and what does it mean to be a king to one's people. And that is why I think Black Panther deserves the praise it gets. Number 13 is the first Amazing Spider Man. Similar to Captain Marvel, I think this is one of the most underrated and underappreciated and misunderstood superhero films of all time. Yes, it's the origin story that we saw in Sam Raimi's Spider Man, but it's not like it was done badly, and it comes down to personal preference to which one you engaged in more. And personally, I was engaged and invested in this version more. From Andrew Garfield's amazing performance, he's one of my favorite portrayals of Spider Man, to him and Emma Stone having amazing chemistry. But that's not all. I very much enjoyed the character arc Peter goes on in this film. Him searching for what happened to his parents and realizing what defines him. And he learns that through his powers as Spider Man, as well as the influence Uncle Ben, Aunt May, and Captain Stacy give him, and the Lizard. And I quite like the Lizard as a villain, honestly. So I will forever be a defender of the Amazing Spider Man. Number 12, Ant Man and the Wasp. Another superhero film that, in my opinion, is criminally underappreciated and overlooked. This is just a fun, feel good film, and that's what I love about it. It continues the themes of the first Ant Man film and runs with it and doubles down on it. The humor is fantastic, the road chase is amazing, the banter between Paul Rudd and Evangeline Lilly, love it. Michael Douglas's comedic timing is amazing, and Michael Pena as well. The chemistry between Paul Rudd and Evangeline Lilly is great. And seeing the Wasp was a delight because she is badass in this film. And this also continues the relationship of fathers and daughters from the first film. And I quite liked Ghost as a villain, especially where she is now in Thunderbolts. I appreciate her even more. So I will forever be a lover of this film. Number 11, Captain America Civil War. Guys, you don't know how close this was to being in my top 10. And I don't blame you if you have this in your top 10 because this is a fantastic film that exceeded all of my expectations. I was worried that it would be more of an Avengers film disguised as a Captain America film, but that's not entirely what we got. Yes, the other Avengers are there, but it's told from Steve Rogers' point of view, and it's about friendship. Him trying to keep his best friend Bucky alive while trying to maintain the friendship he has with Iron Man, his other best friend. And it's very emotional and sad. The airport battle is funny, tense, and dramatic, and the final battle between Cap and Iron Man is fantastic and phenomenal. That's why I love the clash of ideologies. It's been building up to this, as well as it still remaining Captain America film. Number 10, For Love and Thunder. I know, controversial pick, but hear me out. For me, For Love and Thunder takes everything I loved about the first Thor film and Ragnarok and combined it into one. There's kind of a bombastic rom-com feel to it, while also having that entertainment that was in Ragnarok. And I personally enjoyed the story a lot. It was about Thor finding his purpose after everything he's been through, reconciling his relationship with Jane, which I really enjoyed. Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman's chemistry was really good. Valkyrie was a great addition. And I quite enjoyed Gore the God Butcher as a villain because it symbolizes that gods can be jerks. And for essentially becoming a father at the end, I thought was uh, feasible. And him saying goodbye to Jane was quite sad. For me, I enjoyed the humor and I enjoyed the emotional bit. So I will be a defender of this film, which, in my opinion, is the most overhated MCU film. Number 9, Big Hero 6. Admittedly, this might be my favorite Disney animated film of the 2010s. This is just such a charming, well rounded film with humor, heartbreak, emotion, death, teamwork, origin story. It's fantastic. It has everything you want from a superhero film and everything you want from a Disney animated film. Baymax is just a delight. Fred is hilarious. So is Wasabi. I also enjoy Go-Go and Honey Lemon. And the relationship between Hero and Baymax is the centerpiece of this film. It's great. For me, this is kind of the perfect template on how to do a Power Rangers film in modern day. Coming in at number 8 is the original Iron Man. This movie, in my opinion, is practically perfect in every way. It nailed everything: the tone, the origin, the arc, the heart, the humor, the wittiness, the balance. Robert Downey Jr. was born to play this role. To me, he is to Iron Man what Christopher Reeve is to Superman. It also helps that he has phenomenal chemistry with everyone, especially Gwyneth Paltrow and Terrence Howard. And I quite liked Ironmonger as a villain. And the arc totally goes on from being this self destructive, carefree guy to someone that wants to make a difference and redeem himself and the error of his ways. It's just a very compelling story. There's something so special about this first film, if you ask me. Coming in at number 7 is Fantastic Four First Steps. The Fantastic Four movie that the team have always deserved. This had a very good balance between humor and heart. I also love how proud it was to be a comic book film. From the references to different comic book panels to how colorful it is, the costumes. It wears its proud to be a comic book movie badge on its sleeves, and I love it. Not to mention the cast is fantastic. From Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, he is fantastic. Vanessa Kirby, the best Sue Storm. I also love the thing. I do think Pedro Pascal was a little weak compared to the other three, but he was still very good. Not to mention bringing Franklin Richards. And I love how this is a unique Fantastic Four story. And the way Galactus was done is amazing, and the stakes, it was very well done. I love this film so much. Number 6, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. That's right, guys. I still love this movie, and that is not changing. What I love about Quantumania so much is the fact that it ups the stakes of the Ant Man films while keeping the simplicity and quietedness element from the previous two films, which I truly love. First off, I love the look of the quantum realm. I feel this is the first time we've explored it properly. And another key factor that is the heart of this film is the relationship between Scott and his daughter Cassie. Because now she's not a child anymore, she's a teenager. So there's a bit of teenage rebellion, while Cassie is reminding Scott of what it truly means to be a hero and to look out for the little guy because he got a bit of a big head after Endgame. And Jonathan Majors is fantastic as Kang the Conqueror. I also love we got to learn a bit more about Janet and the Pym side of things. It ups the stakes, but it's still small scale. I will forever continue defending Quantumania. Number 5, Logan. Honestly, what can I even say about Logan that hasn't been said already? I would say it is one of the saddest films I have ever seen, while still being one of the most heartfelt and emotional films. What I love about it is that it's extremely depressing, but also there is a glimmer of hope that is very constant throughout the film. Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart, in my opinion, were completely robbed of Oscars. Daphne Khan as X-23 is fantastic as well, and she and Logan have a fantastic dynamic of Hope looking after her when he can barely look after himself. It's a one final hurrah and kind of the true ending to this era of X-Men films. There's something truly special about Logan. Coming in at number 4 is Avengers Infinity War. Another film that I personally don't know if I can say anything that hasn't been said already. This was a perfect culmination of everything the MCU had been building up to, and even made references as far back as Captain America the First Avenger with Red Skull coming back. That blew my mind and was jaw dropping. I love how, again, there was a true balance between humor and heart. There were a lot of funny moments and also a lot of sad moments. And the final scene where half of life is blipped had everyone very shocked, including me. Like the Avengers actually lost, with Thanos actually winning. That is quite groundbreaking. Everyone gives phenomenal performance. I say the top ones are Robert Downey Jr. and Zoe Saldana, and the different factions of the Avengers, seeing what's going on with them, worked really well. And this was a true delight for us Marvel fans. Number 3, Spider Man Far From Home. This is a film I get extremely defensive of because I absolutely adore Far From Home and I will continue sticking up for it. First off, I love Peter's arc. I think this and No Way Home is one of the two times I felt Tom Holland really could have won an Oscar for his performance as Peter Parker. He is fantastic in this role. The arc Peter goes on of learning what kind of hero he needs to be in a post Endgame world where the stakes are higher. I personally love that, and it captures the core of Spider-Man of the lack of self-confidence in himself. Jake Gyllenhaal is a ton of fun as Mysterio. Tom Holland and Zendaya have amazing chemistry that kind of rivals Andrew and Emma's, but they both win in their own ways. I just absolutely love Far From Home. I can just put it on and it brings a smile to my face. I will forever stick up for it. Coming in at number 2 is Avengers Endgame. This was truly phenomenal and wrapped up the Infinity Saga in such a beautiful way. Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, they give such phenomenal performances that, in my opinion, were very Oscar worthy. And these were amazing send offs to Downey's Iron Man and Evans's Captain America. Sure, we're getting Evans back in Endgame, but that's besides the point. This is the conclusion to many arcs and wrapping them up in a very good way. Plus, that final battle is truly cinema, if you ask me. It's comedic like Infinity War, but also sad like Infinity War. They win, but at a price. Tony had to die in one of the saddest deaths in superhero history. There's something truly phenomenal and special about Avengers Endgame. But coming in at number 1 is Spider Man No Way Home. I was worried that I was not going to like this film and that I would be disappointed, especially since we were hearing that it was basically going to be a live action Spider Verse film. But surprisingly, this film worked for me. Not only, like I said, Tom Holland gives a phenomenal Oscar worthy performance, but so does Willem Dafoe. In fact, the dynamic the two have is amazing. And I love how they saved Andrew and Toby for the third act for them to come in because it gave Tom's Peter time to breathe and form his own dynamics with these previous villains. Everyone is giving their A game, and it can be a funny but also sad film because of the sacrifice Peter makes at the end of the film, and it is truly emotional. And the death it captures the core of Spider-Man, and it makes me excited for what's going to happen in the future. So to me, this is more than just fan service. It gives a great arc where Peter has to go through sacrifice. That's why this film comes at number one for me. So there you have it, true believers. That is my current ranking of all 113 Marvel movies. Hope you enjoyed this ranking. Let me know in the comment section what your ranking of all of the Marvel films you've seen down below in the comments. And if you like this video, leave a like, subscribe for more if you enjoy Marvel, Ninja Turtles, Pokemon, DC, Power Rangers, Sonic the Hedgehog, etc. This is the place for you. And if you want to continue talking any of those with me, you can join my Discord server. Link in the description below. And remember, be nice to each other. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe for more. I will be back hopefully very soon. Until then, Sodium285 out.
If the world chooses to become my enemy, I will fight like I always have.